Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us tonight. I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the stimulus package that will likely be on the floor of the Senate tonight or perhaps tomorrow, and take a few minutes to talk about what we might be learning from this crisis that we're in right now. And let me begin by stating that this bill, the stimulus package, is obviously not the bill that I think anyone in the progressive community would have written. There is much in it that I dislike very much, and equally important, there is much that is not in it that should be in it. Further, as we speak right now, there are efforts by right-wing Republicans, Senator Graham and others, who are trying to undermine the compromise that was reached by significantly lowering the amount of money that many workers would be receiving as well as a result of this bill. And needless to say, that is something I will not allow to happen. Having said all of that, as a U.S. Senator, let me also state the very obvious, and that is that elections matter. Donald Trump is the president of the United States, and Republicans do hold a majority in the U.S. Senate. And under that reality, I cannot imagine that there is any bill that could get through the Senate and the White House that fully represents the needs of the working families of our country and that is not laden with large amounts of corporate welfare. That is the sad reality of where we are today. Further, what must be also acknowledged is that our country today faces the worst pandemic since the Spanish flu of 1918, which took 675,000 lives and infected 1/3 of the population. And simultaneously, in addition to the major healthcare crisis we face, we are looking at perhaps the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression of the 1930s. Where will we be in a few months? The truth is that nobody knows. But there are some estimates that unemployment by the end of June could be as high as 30%. And in my view, what we must do, and I think what common sense suggests, is prepare for the worst. Today, there are tens of millions of Americans who are hurting and who are frightened. With half of our people living paycheck to paycheck, these workers and their families worry about what will happen to them when those paychecks stop coming in. And we're seeing this every single day. These are people and families who are barely surviving now. They're making $10 an hour. They're making $12 an hour. And they are wondering what happens when the paychecks cease. Will there be enough money to put food on the table for their kids, to pay for the rent, or to keep the lights on? In this frightening and dangerous and unprecedented moment in modern American history, as we do everything possible to grapple with this crisis and to address it as best we can, it is also appropriate to ask ourselves how we got here and what this says about the financial and economic structure of our country. In other words, I suspect that right now, all across this country, people are asking themselves, how does it happen that in the richest country in the history of the world, when we are spending twice as much per capita on healthcare as the people of any other nation, how is it possible that doctors and nurses today do not have the kind of masks they need to protect themselves? How does it happen? They don't have the gloves. They don't have the gowns. How does it happen that we don't have the necessary ventilators that we need in the midst of this crisis, or the ICU units, or even the emergency beds that are so very important? And I think furthermore, as we think about the moment that we are in, people are understanding that there is something wrong, that we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all as a human right. And when we think about the moment that we're in, we're thinking about how does it happen that so many people are living in economic desperation and are so frightened about what the next few weeks will bring to them. How does it happen that so many of our people are working for jobs that have not allowed them to put money in the bank? Look, this crisis, this epidemic is going to impact everybody. In Fairfield, Connecticut, one of the richest counties in this country, there is an epidemic. Rich people are hurting. The heir to the British throne, Prince Charles, has been diagnosed with the coronavirus. And that is a very, very wealthy family. But in the midst of all of that, if you got money, at least, all you got to worry about is healthcare. You don't have to worry about how you're going to survive financially. But for many, many millions of our families, that is not the case. And we have got to think and think hard about how we create an economy that works for all so that we don't have 40% of our population unable to afford a $400 emergency. Now, let me say a few words about the package that will be likely coming up on the floor of the Senate tonight or tomorrow. Number one, I have insisted, as have many progressives, that this is a time in which we have got to spend what it takes. And let me begin by saying that I believe this package, which is called the Coronavirus 3 package, is not going to be the last package. It will do some good. I expect that there will be a Coronavirus 4 package in not too many weeks. This package, though, is about $2 trillion, not to mention the many trillions more that will be spent by the Fed. This package provides the largest expansion of unemployment benefits in American history, an increase of over $250 billion. Under this bill, average Americans who have been furloughed will be able to receive up to 100% of their salary and their health insurance for 4 months. For 4 months. Weekly unemployment benefits will increase by $600. So if you were laid off, your unemployment benefit will increase by $600 above what it otherwise would have been. And right now, the average benefit is about $364 for workers. Now, also, this expansion of unemployment will include part-time workers. It will include gig workers, like those who drive Uber cars. It will include tip workers and the self-employed who would otherwise not be covered by unemployment insurance. So in other words, what we're doing now is at a time when fewer than half of the American people would normally be covered by unemployment. What this legislation does, it expands it to the overall workforce, and on top of that, for many workers, would provide $600 a week more than they otherwise would have gotten. And that is one of the more important provisions in the bill. In addition, this bill provides $250 billion to go out in one-time checks of $1,200 for adults and $500 for kids. Now, let me be very honest, as some of you may know, I wanted much more. I wanted every American family to be able to receive $2,000 every single month that we continue to exist within the crisis. So this does not do that. And this is clearly not enough to me, but that is what it is. As you may recall, Republicans originally wanted to provide smaller checks or no financial assistance to the poor or very low income Americans. In other words, I guess their mentality was that if you're poor, you deserve less, even though you're struggling more than anybody else. But that is not going to be the case now. The agreement will now provide the same financial assistance to poor and low-income Americans as the middle class. These checks will phase out for individuals making more than $75,000 a year and households making a combined income of more than $150,000. On top of that, there will be some $367 billion going out in loans to small businesses that, importantly, those loans could be forgiven if these small businesses do not lay off workers. And that is very, very important because the goal here is to try to maintain payrolls. As many of you may know, what is going on in the UK, what is going on in Denmark is, I think, the proper approach. What they are saying to employers is we will provide 80-90% of your payroll if you maintain those workers. They may be furloughed, they may be working at home. But we, the government in the UK, was 80%. And that is the direction I think we should have gone right here. But we didn't. There is another approach. But what, again, we are saying, what this bill says to small businesses is that the loans they receive could be forgiven if these businesses do not lay off workers or expand employment after the crisis is over. Furthermore, in this legislation, there is $150 billion that will be provided to states and cities who are today very desperate in terms of their need for a cash infusion to respond to the crisis. These are cities, these are states that are not bringing in the tax revenue that they need. And this infusion of cash will be able to make sure that they maintain payroll. You know, when we're talking about this crisis and we're talking about reaching out to people, you do that through the government, through the federal government, through the state government, through the local government. And if local and state workers are laid off, it will be virtually impossible to get the benefits out that are in this bill. So furthermore, what we are now talking about is over $100 billion that will be provided to reimburse hospitals and medical providers for lost revenue related to the coronavirus. And that is a major, major concern. Right now, there are hospitals all over this country who fear that they will be overwhelmed with patients suffering from the coronavirus. They are now needing to expend money for ventilators, for ICU units, and the revenue that they normally are getting in for surgeries and other procedures is not coming in. So this is a desperate need, and there will be that money available to those hospitals all across this country. In addition, something that has been important to me for many, many years, there will be an additional $1.3 billion to be provided in emergency funding for community health centers who are an integral part of the primary health care system in this country. I think you're going to see a lot of folks coming into the community health centers, and they're going to need the additional help. Furthermore, there will be $1 billion provided for the Defense Production Act to begin to ramp up production of personal protective equipment, ventilators, and other medical supplies, and billions more for federal, state, and local health agencies to purchase this equipment. As you have heard me say before, it is beyond belief that the President of the United States has not fully utilized the Defense Production Act. And what that act says is that the private sector, companies in the private sector, being well paid for their efforts, must convert their production away from consumer goods to the medical needs and other needs that the American people need right now. Now, the truth is, we don't need at this particular moment in history more T-shirt production, more underwear production, more sock production. What we do need is the production of masks for our doctors and our nurses and for others. We need more gowns, for protective gowns for our medical personnel. We need more gloves. And that is what the Defense Production Act is, and the president must fully utilize that act. This legislation will also make certain that Americans can receive a free test for the coronavirus. But unfortunately, and this is again sad, it is pathetic, but it is the world that we live in, the Republicans would not agree to make the treatment free. So right now, in the midst of this crisis, what this bill says, okay, the good news is if you can find a test, and that is another crisis, there aren't enough tests available around the country, you can get it free of charge. Government will pay for it. But if, God forbid, you are diagnosed with the coronavirus, well, you're on your own. Well, what happens if I don't have any money? Well, that takes us back to the whole dysfunctionality of our current healthcare system. But that is what is in this bill. In addition, over $7 billion will be provided for affordable housing and homelessness assistance programs. This funding will help low-income and working-class Americans to avoid evictions and help the homeless. Now, I worry very much that in the midst of this crisis, and I think we'll maybe do another virtual town meeting on the issue, I worry about what happens to the most vulnerable people in this country, people who are currently in penitentiaries and jails, people who are homeless, people who are living on the brink. This legislation, this proposal goes some way forward, but I don't think anywhere near enough. Furthermore, in the proposal, there will be $3.5 billion provided for the Child Care Development Block Grant to provide child care assistance to healthcare sector employees, emergency responders, sanitation workers, and other workers deemed essential during the response to the coronavirus. And I think the point here that everybody should appreciate is, yes, doctors and nurses and medical personnel are on the front line. They are working, they are putting their lives on the line to do everything they can to keep the American people healthy and prevent deaths. But they're not the only people who are putting themselves in danger. People who are working in grocery stores right now, or interacting with many customers, people who are working in drugstores, police officers, firefighters, first responders, sanitation workers. All of these people are putting their lives on the line to protect us, and many of them have kids. And what this provision does is say, okay, if you or your wife cannot be at home, there will be money available for child care for your children. In addition, nearly $16 billion in this bill will be provided to help our nation's veterans, including funding to treat veterans who have tested positive for the coronavirus, enable them to purchase test kits and procure personal protective equipment for medical providers at the VA. And in addition, some $590 million in dedicated funding to treat vulnerable veterans, including homeless veterans and those in VA-run nursing homes. So this is an effort to make sure that we understand that there are a lot of veterans out there who are in trouble, they're vulnerable, and they have got to be protected. In addition, over $30 billion will be provided in grants to help provide emergency support to local school systems and higher education systems to continue educational services for their students and to support school districts and institutions during this crisis. I mean, one of the many aspects of this crisis that worries me a whole lot is that all across this country, millions and millions of kids are not in school right now. I know some school districts are doing better than others, trying to provide online classes, trying to get teachers to interact with their kids. But there's no question but that public schools, private schools for that matter, higher education institutions are in a lot of trouble as a result of the crisis. In addition, there will be $25 billion that will be provided to our public transit systems to help protect the public health and safety of Americans while ensuring access to jobs, medical treatment, food, and other essential services. What you're seeing all across the country is obviously as people are staying home, as they're not going to their jobs, fewer and fewer people are using public transportation. And this is causing a major financial crisis for many public transportation systems all across this country who are already strapped to begin with and now are losing substantial sums of revenue. So this is an effort to keep those public transportation systems going so the people who have got to get to work will be able to have a means to do that. In addition, there will be $900 million provided in emergency energy assistance to help lower-income families and senior citizens pay their heat and air conditioning bills. Further, there will be $500 billion in business loans to be distributed at the discretion of the Treasury Department. And let me stop here, because this is, to my mind, the most problematic provision in the bill. And it concerns me, as I think it concerns many Americans, very, very much. You will all recall back in 2008 during the Wall Street bailout, there was a blank check written for Wall Street and for financial institutions, not only in this country, but all over the world. Central banks received trillions of dollars in zero-interest loans. Now, this bill, in my view, is a lot better than that 2008 Wall Street bailout bill, which I voted against. But I am very, very, very concerned about a $500 billion that will go out to the corporate world without, let me underline, without the accountability and transparency that is needed. We do not need, at this moment in history, to provide a massive amount of corporate welfare to large, profitable corporations. I think, as many of you are aware, you have industries like the airlines industries, among others, that have provided for stock buybacks, billions and billions of dollars for stock buybacks. They spent all their cash rewarding themselves and their stockholders. And lo and behold, today, they need a major bailout. So the concern here is, A, do we trust the Trump administration to effectively decide which company will get the loans or the grants? The answer is no, I do not. Do we think that these loans and grants during a political season will be used to benefit the president's election prospects? Absolutely, I do. So this is the most problematic aspect of this whole bill. $500 billion going out to corporations as determined by the administration. On the positive side, I would say, is that this financial assistance, which will no doubt go to the tourism industry, will go to hotels, airlines industry, other concerns, there has been a provision put into it, which obviously makes sense, is that there will be no financial assistance going to any business owned by Donald Trump, Mike Pence, members of Congress, or any of the billionaires in Trump's cabinet. It will also prohibit companies from using this financial assistance to buy back their stock or to enrich their executives. But I must tell you, there is a waiver in that which concerns me very much. Obviously, if you're going to give money to companies, you don't want to see that the CEO saw a significant increase in his or her compensation. You don't want more buybacks. The language prohibits that, but there is a waiver which I fear could be used. Further, as part of the oversight process, the final bill will establish a panel to provide oversight to this money and an independent inspector general to protect taxpayers against waste, fraud, and abuse. But in my judgment, that is probably not enough to prevent the kind of corporate welfare that will be going out to entities all across this country who really don't need it, who are taking advantage of the crisis. So that is a broad overview of the bill as it stands right now. My understanding is there will be a vote either late tonight or early tomorrow. So once again, this bill is not the bill that I would have written. On the other hand, it is a much stronger pro-middle class, pro-working class bill than was the 2008 Wall Street bailout. There will, in fact, be billions and billions of dollars going out to put desperately needed cash in the hands of workers, in the hands of lower income people, in the hands of families. There will be substantial sums of money going to hospitals who desperately need it. There will be substantial sums of money going to cities and towns and counties who are also in financial desperation. So that is kind of an overview of where we are right now. And let me just reiterate something that I believe absolutely is, and that is that in this moment of crisis, perhaps a worse crisis than this country has ever faced in the last 100 years, while we address all of the needs of our people as best we can, given who the President of the United States is, given who the leadership of the Senate is, that while we do our best to address these crises, it is extremely important that we try to understand how we got to where we are today and the need to bring about fundamental reform of American society. And I think, as many of you know, it is my belief that instead of having a government based on greed and corruption, we need to move forward in terms of justice, in terms of economic justice, social justice, racial justice, environmental justice. We need to guarantee human rights to all of our people and end this unfettered capitalism and this struggle, survival of the fittest. And that means we must make healthcare a human right for all. It must mean that we guarantee a job to all of our people at decent wages. It must be that we understand that housing, affordable, high-quality housing, is a human right, that education is a human right, that when you turn on the water faucet in your house, you have the right to make sure that that water is clean and the air that you breathe is clean, and that when you reach old age, that you will retire with security and dignity. So the goal right now is to do our best, taking on Trump and the Republican leadership in the Senate, to fight for working families. But in addition to that, our goal is to create an America that works for all of us and not just the few and the powerful. Good evening, and thank you very much.